Love and hardcore policies are the same. You feed the children. You repair the earth. You allow people to get an education. You help people have childcare. You let people have family leave and sick pay and a guaranteed living wage. That to me is love and justice in action. Love that's just Hallmark card love has never been of interest to me. And I've never been about that. I've never been about the soft and fuzzy woo-woo love that people try to project onto me. Like you were talking about Project Angel Food. Being at the bedside of people dying of AIDS and vomiting all over you, and somebody saying, hold back, Marianne, be careful there. Was that woo-woo fuzzy love? I don't think so.
I'm glad you brought that up because actually, we talked about this earlier. I don't watch The View this morning when I was looking up the most recent news about you. One of the hosts, I think her name is Sunny, and she goes, oh, Marianne thinks that disease is all in the brain and that it's not real. My uncle died from AIDS. And I'm like, you're talking about the woman that created a project for men and women dying of AIDS. And like you said, sat by their side. A camera person who has been at the network for years told me, we used to, when we did stories about AIDS, the camera guy would stand outside the window of the hospital because he was too afraid to go in. He didn't want to go near this AIDS patient. And you're standing there holding their hand. Let's talk about that.
My sister died of breast cancer. I don't need to be schooled by Sunny Hostin on the reality of illness, the reality of the tragedy. How dare she?
Ever since I wrote my goals down with the pen, my dreams and reality have both been blending in. I just hope that in the end, my debt don't extend me on my dividends. If it did, I'd have to keep pivoting, turn the other cheek and down another dose of adrenaline.
So I want to start actually with something that happened right before we got on this Zoom, which was I heard somebody speaking on a podcast and I thought, oh, he'd be a great guest. And I go to his Instagram and I see all of these photos of him hunting, but not just hunting, like a turkey or a deer. He was hunting bears and lions and these like mountain lions, like really beautiful animals. And I just thought, I don't want this guy in my podcast. Like, I don't stand for this. And I just immediately wrote it off. And then I realized I'm not being fair. There could be a reason he's hunting. They could be I don't know what's going on, but I would want somebody to give me that chance. So I actually reached out to him and we had this beautiful conversation. And it was interesting to me right before I sat down with you, the parallel in that, whereas people who might have different moral standings than you, or maybe don't understand consciousness or spirituality, are just quick to attack or discredit without saying, hey, let's hear what Marianne has to say.
Well, that's politics. I mean, it's a dirty business and people go directly into the smuts, and it's the toxicity that makes a lot of people not want anything to do with politics. It's turned a lot of people away from politics, made a lot of people apolitical in their thinking. Oh, I'm not into politics. But as I point out to a lot of people, look what's happened here. So many of us, and I know viscerally for good reason, have said, I don't want anything to do with that. So the people who are more sensitive and don't want to be part of that smut-filled dynamic go away, and it just becomes more smutty. It just becomes more toxic. And I think at this point, there is a critical mass of people who realize we can't continue to look away. No matter how much we heal in our personal lives, the collective is poisoned by thought and behavior that is self-destructive. Self-destructive for us as a society, and possibly self-destructive for us as a species. So I think people are registering the seriousness of this moment, the urgency of this moment. If the political field is so filled with awfulness, we can't just look away, we have to transform it. And in my own experience, that means having to endure it, but chaos that you don't endure, you're not in a position to help transform.
Interesting. Yeah, because you're right. Most people, the immediate reaction is, I'm going to stay out of politics. I want nothing to do with this. Yours is to jump right in.
I wouldn't say that I jumped right in. I had a long career not jumping in. I had a long career on the periphery, being involved, raising money, giving what money I had, starting nonprofits, supporting candidates. But I got to a point where I was up close and personal with too many people who were enduring hardships in their lives that were a direct result, sometimes an indirect result, but often a direct result of bad public policy. And I saw that while over and over again, I supported legislation, I supported candidates who theoretically could make a difference, I came to see over time that the system itself is resistant to the kind of fundamental repair that would make a difference in the majority of people's lives. And at that point, I thought, well, the only way to make a difference there is if you jump in.
I looked up right before this what the latest headlines around you were, and the first thing was the press secretary for Biden making jokes, saying things about crystal balls and auras. And that either shows to me that they didn't do any research because you've never spoken about crystal balls or auras, or that they did do their research, but they know it's a quick way to discredit you, to kind of make a joke about crystal balls and auras. And all of a sudden, to a viewer who might not know who you are, they just picture you with crystal balls. And
well, clearly it's the latter. As you said, I've never written or talked about crystal balls or auras. To me, it says somebody was a little rattled. Although I know from my previous experience, if you're inconvenient to them in any way, I know what they'll do to try to peripheralize your voice. So it is what it is. The president has said that he would fire somebody on the spot if they showed disrespect. Well, she certainly showed disrespect, but you know what? Two things. First of all, if you're going to run certainly for office, period, but certainly as for president, you have to develop a thick skin. And secondly, and this could just be wishful thinking, but my sense is that there are more people today who are questioning all that, who aren't willing to be so easily suckered in. People are worried about the fact they don't have health care. People are worried about the fact that they can't send their kids to college. People are worried about the fact that they don't have childcare. People are worried about the fact that they don't have a livable wage or a place to live. People are worried about the fact that they're actually afraid of joining the ranks of the poor. They want to hear alternative voices. And they're beginning, I believe, or at least many people I meet, beginning to realize that they have the right to hear whoever might have some ideas and not appreciate the people who would make that more difficult. So I think there's a lot of American people are processing a lot right now, trying to figure out what's really true. My father used to tell us about something called the Byzantine rule, that nothing is ever quite the way it appears. I think people are figuring that out.
They really are. Somebody brought up something recently that I really liked. It was a YouTube video that I was watching. It might have been like Joe Rogan or something. He was saying, these older shows, like even I think one of the people that were discussing you right before I got on this call was The View. And The View, right? These shows where they have these audiences where you have a person saying, like, you've been on these shows where there's like the person, and I've been on these shows where they're riling up the crowd, they're telling them when to applaud, when to boo. We don't see that as the viewer, but in the audience, they even run it during commercial break. Hey, so we're gonna say we're going to commercial, and you're all gonna cheer like you're so excited that we're back, or we're going. It's all manufactured. And the reason I bring that up is I watched one of the morning shows, and they introduced you as not Marianne Williamson, who's running for president or any of that. They said Marianne Williamson, who ahead of her long shot challenge. Like they immediately set up the entire thing, even if it is a long shot, which it is. You're going against a system, a huge institution.
Well, Barack Obama, when he first ran against Hillary Clinton, was certainly a quote unquote long shot. Hillary was considered a shoo-in. And those are the same people who were saying Trump could never win, even the afternoon of his victory. So, of course, they're, what is it? Manufactured consent. Of course, they're trying to create a narrative that then reaches into people's subconscious mind so that then it becomes true. They know what they're doing.
Speaking of Hillary, when I did an interview with her when she was running against Obama the first time around, and I had crystals in my pocket, little crystals. And I remember the Secret Service, and this was just like who I am. I was a serious journalist. I was covering massive stories, but I still liked having little crystals and things around me. And I remember, I guess I left them in my pocket, and the Secret Service made such a huge deal about it. They wouldn't let me into the room. I had to go back to my car, leave the crystals, and come back. And we're talking tiny little rocks. I think there was 2 or 3 of them. And I love the juxtaposition. Fast forward 6 years later, and we have someone like you who is running pretty seriously. Do you think people are becoming more open and more receptive to the idea that there is something else out there? There's something bigger?
If I'm clear about anything, it's that the American people are not the problem. When people say to me, oh, Marianne, don't run for political office, just stay and help influence consciousness. Consciousness has been influenced. The American people are not the problem. The American people, if you look at poll after poll, want universal health care. They want a guaranteed living wage. They want the things that the citizens of every other advanced democracy have. That's not the problem. The problem is the political system. So when you say, are people more open? Yeah, I think people are more open. I mean, a lot of these people, who are putting me down and lying about me and smearing me are actually going to yoga class after work and probably doing one of the affirmations with one of my quotes. So I get it and they get it. The American people are ready to evolve. The American people are ready to move forward. The political system stays stuck in its conversation somewhere like late 80s, early 1990s, because that is the way that they keep control. They accrue to themselves the sense that they're the grown-ups in the room when it comes to politics and that they know what's going on. And so they keep the public conversation very sophomoric, sort of seventh grade level, because that's the way that they can sort of keep control. So I've noticed when it comes to personal conversation, two Americans talking, three Americans talking, maybe four Americans talking, we are as capable of getting deep, getting real, putting the truth on the table, getting down as people anywhere in the world. But in our public conversation, we've been trained to act stupid, even though we're not. And I think people realize this is not a moment for any of us to be thinking like seventh graders, which is, I don't want to put down seventh graders because I think some seventh graders are considering some of the problems in the world, such as environmental, probably more maturely than many grown-ups are. But I think people are ready and appreciative for, and really almost yearning for, whether it's a conscious yearning or not, for someone to just have a more truthful conversation about what's happening. Because if we don't get real, if we don't start telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about what's really happening in this country, then we will not be able to repair what is becoming increasing damage to our democracy, to our environment, to our economy, and to ourselves.
Let's talk a little bit about that damage. What would you say is one of the most kind of damning things in the country, and what is a way that you would want to come in and change that?
One of the most damaging things is an unjust economic system. Over the last 48 years, there has been a transfer of $50 trillion from the bottom 90% to the top 1% of Americans. And this is due to an economic mindset called by many names. You can call it neoliberalism. You can call it trickle-down economics, hyper-capitalism, free market fundamentalism, whatever it is. It is the very idea that a major corporation's main responsibility should be its fiduciary responsibility to its stockholders. Now, previous to that, there was a sense that there were many stakeholders. The workers were stakeholders. The community was a stakeholder. The environment was a stakeholder. Once we were seduced into this thinking that no, what we need to do is make sure the stockholders and then the CEO class make a lot of money, that'll be better, because they'll make so much money and they'll be the job creators.
Right.
And so that money will trickle down and it will lift all boats. Not only has it not lifted all boats, it's left millions and millions of people without even a life vest. It has caused decreased spending in the public sector so that there could be increased spending and wealth creation in the private sector. It has involved the demonization and the suppression of unions. It has caused this squeezing of benefits. In the 1970s, the average American worker had decent benefits, could afford a car, could afford a vacation every year, could afford a home, and could afford to send their kids to college. It could even afford for one parent to stay home to be with the children if they wanted to. That was in the 1970s. So today, the American economy works for roughly 20% of us. And if you're in that 20%, it's an enchanted economic island. But that island is surrounded by a vast sea of economic despair. 60 to 64% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. 1 in 4 Americans carrying medical debt. 18 million Americans unable to fulfill the prescriptions that their doctors give them. Half of our seniors living on less than $25,000 a year, 12 million children going to bed hungry every night. People know that only a very few Americans now have easy access to education. Only a few Americans have easy access to excellent health care. And people are waking up to the fact, why is that? When those things, such as universal health care, such as tuition-free college, which we had in this country until the 1960s, is given to the citizens of every other advanced democracy. So that's the first thing you have to change. You have to name and interrupt the pattern of corporate aristocracy, because that corporate aristocracy today, often called the corporatocracy, is this matrix of corporate industrial monopolistic power. Insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, big agricultural, chemical, food companies, gun manufacturers, defense contractors, and of course, big oil. And they function like the landed gentry, the aristocrats that we repudiated in 1776. First, they get theirs. They are so wealthy. They are able to flood Washington, D.C. with their lobbyists. They pay millions and millions and millions of dollars in donations to both parties. And so they own our government. So that undue influence, that undue financial influence, is the cancer that underlies all the cancers. Now, the Republican Party is bought and sold at this point. The Democratic Party is filled with people having it's a split. So there's the corporate Democrats, and the corporate Democrats would say, yeah, it's true, that there's a lot of suffering. So we'll try to get rid of a lot of that suffering on the periphery. In other words, let's help people survive an unjust system. So they say, we want to help people have an easier time to surviving, but we refuse to challenge the underlying corporate forces that make all that suffering inevitable, because we're taking the donations too. That is what President Biden represents, helping people survive an unjust system. What we need to do is end the unjust system. What we need to do is to disrupt the entire system of neoliberalism. What we need to do is challenge all that. What we need to do is to cut some of those multi-billion-dollar corporate subsidies that we give to companies that actually are already making hundreds of billions of dollars in profit. What we need to do, for instance, I'll give you an example. The president has said that he would veto any bill for Medicare for all. Well, there's no reason why we don't have universal health care. So when people say it's complicated, no, the problem is not that it's complicated, it's corrupt. But you need a president who is willing to say that. You need a president who is willing to employ what's called the marching rights, granted in the Bayh-Dole Act, which means that if a pharmaceutical company has been aided in its development of any drug with any taxpayer money, then the government actually has the right to march in there and to reduce the pricing so that it's competitive. There are all kinds of ways that the government can wield power, whether it has to do with the president going in there and saying there will not be any more government contracts with union busters, whether it has to do with a president working it until we actually get an increased minimum wage. This president has said, yes, he was going to increase the minimum wage. He did it for federal workers. When it came to doing it for everyone, once the parliamentarian, who has no actual political authority, said that that doesn't work, then the Biden administration pretty much just hid behind the skirts of the parliamentarian. It means that when you say that, as the president does, that climate change is an existential crisis, you don't then turn around and give more oil drilling permits to oil companies than even Trump had given at this point in his presidency, and also, okay, the Willow Project. So what you do is you cancel the Willow Project. What you do is you declassify marijuana. What you do is that you call for every CEO of every price gouging corporation to be, and you talk about how they should be testifying before Congress. You call, as president, for the audit of every dollar that is spent by the Pentagon. You call together senators like Tim Scott and Cory Booker and others and say, you're not leaving my office until we come up with some plan for bipartisan legislation having to do with police reform. You don't just name it and then go do something else. In the first 2 years of the president's administration, when he had both House and Senate, they passed the child tax credit, and that cut in half child poverty in the United States. But 6 months later, when it was time to permanentize it, they just let it expire. Why? Because you're giving in to the forces who say, we can't go spending our money on helping hungry children. That's how sociopathic this economic neoliberal system is. It puts short-term profits for huge corporations before the safety and the health and the well-being of people and animals and planet. You're not going to be able to go to the American people in 2024 and say the economy is doing good, which apparently is the message that these the geniuses at the DC think tanks have come up with as the president's message in 2024. 20% of Americans would say, yeah, the economy is pretty good. Meanwhile, 80% of Americans, their visceral experience is anything but that the economy is doing well. So there are some big lies that are going to be coming at us in 2024, and we need a candidate who's going to be telling some big truths.
You know, when you talk a lot about systems and the system, and the DNC, as you say, is rigged, and it's very clearly biased toward Biden and getting him back on the ticket or on the agenda. Why not run as an independent or as a different? Why go directly head to head in the Democratic Party?
Well, first of all, I think part of it is kind of a nostalgia, kind of romantic image that I have of the Democratic Party, having been raised in a home, where my father died in 1994, 95. And anytime there was an election and you asked him who he voted for, he'd say Roosevelt. I use Major Roosevelt. I'm I wouldn't say I'm a scholar, but I'm certainly a student of Roosevelt, although Roosevelt himself got to the point where he had it with some of the craziness in the Democratic Party. So I'm a Rooseveltian Democrat, and I've watched the change in my own lifetime. I have felt that I knew that they were going to try to invisibilize me, and they certainly have. It's amazing the mainstream media sources who will not have me on. They won't even have me on.
Like who?
CNN has not responded to us. MSNBC, I was on the Jonathan Capehart show, but none of the other hosts. CBS, ABC, I'm very grateful, has had me on. But the effort to invisibilize me, and as you were talking about, make life really hard for me, the cannonballs they've sent out are there. But I thought it would be even easier for them to invisibilize me if I ran as a third-party candidate. There is a kind of unholy alliance between the Democrats and the Republicans, by which operationally they've made it very, very difficult for anybody from a third party to really participate at the highest level. Third-party voices have been important in our history, and political parties aren't even mentioned in our Constitution. George Washington warned us against them. He said they would form factions of men more interested in their party than in their country. We can certainly see that. John Adams said he thought that it was the greatest threat to democracy. So, we're seeing political parties act as gatekeepers in a way that should not occur in a democracy. And what they're doing now with, clearing the field. We're not even going to listen to anybody or even acknowledge the presence of anyone who is even thinking of primarying the president. That's not the Democratic Party I grew up with. Eugene McCarthy primary Johnson, Bobby Kennedy primary Johnson. And they're saying, oh, when that happens, it doesn't work out well for us. I think there are a lot of other things involved. First of all, Bobby died. Then they say, oh, but Teddy Kennedy primaried Carter and he lost. Well, that had more to do with Ronald Reagan than it had to do with Teddy Kennedy. And more than that, this isn't 100 years ago where men got to just sit around a table smoking cigars and deciding who the nominee is. So I felt that if I ran as third party, it would be even easier to marginalize, including in people's minds. People say they're ready for something else, but then when it comes right down to it, it makes you wonder.
It's very ingrained. It's ingrained in us to be one or the other.
It's ingrained. Yeah. And I think that you're able to call the system on its malfeasance more from within the system. I think that people are seeing that the Democratic Party, and some think that that's what the Democratic Party should do, make it difficult for anybody to primary the president because we have decided that he is the best candidate for 2024. I look at it differently. I think the people should decide. I'm radically American in my thinking. To me, that is pro-democracy. How can you say you're the party that wants to protect democracy if you don't trust the democratic process in your own determination of a candidate? So to me, the people should decide who the Democratic president is in 2024. The president and I have very different agendas, and it should be the voters in the primary who decide, number one, what is the best agenda and the best person to present to the American people as an alternative to the Republican, whoever it is in 2024? And probably even more importantly, what is the agenda that will repair this country? And I feel mine, which is fundamental economic reform, is the agenda that will get this country back on track.
So, Marianne, there are people watching this who will have voted for Biden in the last election. There are people watching who voted for Donald Trump in the last election. What would you say to both of those people? Somebody who voted for Biden and somebody who voted for Trump. What would you say directly to either of them?
Well, if you voted for Biden, so did I. And we should be very grateful to President Biden for defeating Trump. And some of the things that he has done have been nice, but they have not been enough. And there has been some duplicity there as well. We were told there would be a higher minimum wage. We were told that the existential crisis of climate change would be answered. And answered. He has approved the Willow project, which is an $8 billion fossil fuel program. He has not stood up for union workers, although he calls himself the labor president. Some things, the people he has appointed to the NLRB, et cetera, and that's good, but nothing like it should be. When it came, for instance, to the railroad strike, he sided with the railroad companies. He didn't side with the workers. So when he says he wants another 4 years to finish the job? What is there he is saying he's going to do in the next 4 years that he really couldn't have done this time? Yes, I understand he doesn't have the Senate right now. I understand he had Sinema. I understand he had Manchin to contend with. But there are many, many ways in which the president has made good on his statement that there would be no fundamental change. And that fundamental situation is one of economic injustice for the majority of people. I don't believe that status quo, more of that, is what's going to defeat the Republicans in 2024. So you don't have to be against Joe Biden. He's a nice man. But I think we should have some serious consideration of whether or not he is the best candidate for 2024. And I would argue that he's not. For those who voted for Trump, some of the people who voted for Trump, I simply see the world differently. So you might not want to vote for me, and I understand. For many of the people who voted for Trump, I think really did want to smash a system that they thought was economically unjust. And I would say to those people, you're right, it is economically unjust. In 2016, two people validated the understandable rage of millions and millions of Americans regarding the economic opportunities that they knew had been withheld from them: Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. The difference is Bernie meant it. Trump just figures out how to make the deal. Trump says whatever will make the deal. His own son-in-law said that he had told his father-in-law, there are a lot of angry people out there. We could harness all that and make you president. This is not even the Donald Trump that we all knew in the 80s. He just figured out this is the way to get people. Bernie actually wished to effectuate change. So I don't need to tell this to a lot of people who voted for Trump. A lot of people who voted for Trump already know. He said he stood for change that actually he did not stand for. If anything, he only bolstered the corporatocracy. Very good at throwing crumbs to people to sort of cover all that. But in the end, he has an authoritarian, almost anti-democratic streak, a real lack of respect for democracy itself.
Would you debate a Donald Trump, and would you debate a Joe Biden?
Can't wait. First of all, I think with debating the president, I hope people understand it's important that he debate me. This idea of clearing the field so that we just coronate the president, that's not what American democracy should be. So I very much look forward to debating Joe Biden. I hope people will demand it. And I really look forward to debating Donald Trump. I look forward to debating Ron DeSantis, if that's who it is. Whoever it is, if I wasn't already at a place within myself of bring it on, I wouldn't be doing this.
Have you spoken? You mentioned Sanders. Have you spoken to any of these people, like Sanders or anyone that you ran against last time?
Yes. Senator Sanders had said to Business Insider, I believe, he said, I know Marianne, she's going to run a strong campaign and bring up very important issues. I was very honored by that, and I hope that he can see, and that everybody else can see, that I'm certainly trying to do that. I am bringing up on an economic level basically the same progressive policies that Bernie Sanders brought to the American people, and with which I think he would have won in 2016.
I spoke to a mutual friend of ours and I said, I want you to just send me a paragraph or a few sentences about why you think your friend Marianne would be a good leader. And she said that you started Project Angel Food, and that, you know, she goes pretty deep into that. So I'm not going to read the whole paragraph, but why that was so important. And we can talk a little bit about what that was and why you created it. She said, who else is bold enough to run on a platform of love and compassion than the one who wrote A Return to Love? We need to have a country that is kinder to each other. It's time for a woman leader, because women think and feel differently. They are wired differently. And a woman like Marianne would aim for peace, a ministry of peace versus a ministry of war from the 44 male presidents before. The tone of the conversation needs to change, and whoever has heard Marianne speak could never doubt that it could change.
That's sweet.
Does it resonate at all with maybe what you're, I know in the very first time you ran, there was a lot about a platform for love, a ministry of love, a ministry of peace. Are we still there, or is it more actionable change at this point?
If you actually looked at my website last time, there was just as much actionable hardcore political change then as there is now. If you actually came to hear me speak, you heard me speak, you know, once again, it's like the comments from Corinne Jean-Pierre. I don't get up and talk about crystals and rainbows, and I never have. Hopefully there's less fairy dust now in front of people's eyes, but in a way there's more of another kind. To me, what I am saying now, as I said then, is that we have to change from an economic bottom line to a humanitarian bottom line. The bottom line, the governing principle of our society should not be short-term profit maximization for huge corporations. It should be the safety, health, and well-being of the American people. I take very seriously Lincoln's line that the men who died at Gettysburg, he said, gave the last full measure of devotion, were his words regarding their deaths. He said, so that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people would not perish from the earth. My message is that it's perishing now. We have, for all intents and purposes, become a government of the corporations, by the corporations, and for the corporations. We're not even functioning as a democracy. We're functioning actually as more of an oligarchy. So to me, that is love. There is no love where there is no justice. You know, in the book of Isaiah, justice, justice, thou shalt pursue. There is not economic justice in this country. There's not criminal justice in this country. There's not racial justice in this country. There's not environmental justice in this country, because the needs and the profit-making mechanisms of huge corporate entities are placed before our commitment to justice. So to me, that is love. To me, real love is not just saying I love the children. Real love means I'm going to feed those hungry children. I'm going to permanentize that child tax credit. And I'm not just going to go for having child poverty. I want to eradicate child poverty. By the way, while we're at it, I want to eradicate poverty. I want to be a poverty abolitionist. You know, during the 1960s, Lyndon Johnson launched the War on Poverty. They said the goal of the War on Poverty was a complete eradication of it by 1976. Obviously, between the Vietnam War and then the election of Richard Nixon in 1968, that war on poverty was pushed to the side. It's time for us to inaugurate it again. Part of the problem in America today, though, is that in the 1960s, when a president said, we're going to have a war on poverty, people went, that's good. That's good. Today, people have been so seduced into this neoliberal thinking that people go, oh, we can't raise money for that. What, we have to spend all our money on corporate subsidies? We have to spend all our money on tax breaks for the very wealthy? We have to spend all our money on having a defense budget way beyond what even our military commanders feel is necessary? So, yeah, it is about love. And to me, love and hardcore policies are the same. You feed the children. You repair the earth. You allow people to get an education. You help people have childcare. You let people have family leave and sick pay and a guaranteed living wage. That, to me, is love and justice in action. Love that's just Hallmark card love has never been of interest to me. And I've never been about that. I've never been about the soft and fuzzy woo-woo love that people try to project onto me. I never have been. throughout my career. Like you were talking about Project Angel Food. Being at the bedside of people dying of AIDS and vomiting all over you, and somebody saying, hold back, Marianne, be careful there. Was that woo-woo fuzzy love? I don't think
I'm glad you brought that up, because actually I don't watch, we talked about this earlier, I don't watch The View, but I see a clip of it this morning when I was looking up the most recent news about you. One of the hosts, I think her name is Sunny, and she goes, oh, Marianne thinks that disease is all in the brain and that it's not real. It's just like, it's such a flip-flop of what you believe. But what she said was, and I get it, because these people live in this world where they can't even comprehend anything outside of what's right in front of them. And she said, and I'm not talking about all reporters, I have reporter friends, very close reporter friends at major networks who have come with me to see you speak at the Saban Theater. So, but, she said, my uncle died from AIDS. And I'm like, you're talking about the woman that created a project for men and women dying of AIDS, and like you said, sat by their side. A camera person who has been at the network for years told me, we used to, when we did stories about AIDS, the camera guy would stand outside the window of the hospital because he was too afraid to go in. He didn't want to go near this AIDS patient. And you're standing there holding their hand. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, that was particularly the lies, and the smear from her was particularly, my sister died of breast cancer. I don't need to be schooled by Sunny Hostin on the reality of illness, reality of the tragedy. How dare she? But she does, because apparently that was what they decided on at The View. It has nothing to do with responsible journalism or anything even approaching that.
So for somebody now listening, and they're maybe for the first time understanding what it is that you teach, what you've spoken about in the past, what would you say to that person? It doesn't matter where they are on the Democrat, Republican, independent, just the average American. What would you say to them?
It's interesting, because I don't feel I'm talking to a Black American, a white American, a gay American, a straight American, a transgender American, a Republican American, a Democrat American. It's like these silos are really limiting us at this point. I'm just talking to the heart and the conscience of the decent American, which is who I believe the vast majority of us are. And I would say that over the last 50 years, we have swayed, we have swerved from our dedication to our own core principles, that all men are created equal. All men are created equal. That the Declaration of Independence is our mission statement. All men are created equal, given by God inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Governments are instituted to secure those rights. Government's not here to thwart those rights. We are actually living at a time where, instead of expanding our democratic franchise, we're actually diminishing it. This is an extraordinary moment. Other generations pushed back against slavery with abolition. They pushed back against institutional suppression of women with the women's suffrage movement. They pushed back against segregation with the civil rights movement. We're having to push back against things that didn't even exist before, like this assault on transgender Americans, this assault on women, actually taking rights away from women, trying to take rights away from people who even previously had them. We are living at a time when some very malevolent viruses of consciousness, ancient viruses of consciousness, homophobia, racism, anti-Semitism. This stuff is very serious and very real and has deadly historic consequences. These things are ideological threats to the real vision, the core vision of democracy. And at the same time, neoliberalism, the system of inherent economic injustice, except for a very few, is eroding it from the inside. What I would say to the average American is, please listen to me. Give me a hearing. That's our responsibility. Just hear what the candidates have to say, because I'm saying we need a president who's willing to name it and to say it like it is. We need a president who is willing to stand strong for our democratic freedoms and our core values in the Declaration of Independence. And we need a president who is ready to wisely and responsibly turn this ship around. We need to make an economic U-turn in this country, but it must not be chaotic. It must be just. Let's do it in the way that I do believe a woman will bring to the process a level of care. If you make a transition from a dirty economy to a clean economy, you're going to have thousands of people there whose jobs are now, they feed their families by working for what is essentially, at least indirectly, fossil fuel companies. Those people have to be taken care of. Those people should be their jobs must be prioritized in terms of making a lateral move. A lot of them are in manufacturing, administrative jobs, research, development. So we have to be very careful so that nobody falls through the cracks. The same with moving from a war economy to a peace economy. The world is complicated. We don't need somebody naive about world affairs. And I'm not, I look at the US military like you would look at a surgeon. If America needs surgery, we need to have the best surgeon on hand. But a reasonable person avoids surgery if at all possible. So I'm not saying as commander-in-chief, I would be incapable of applying surgical military moves if necessary. But I believe that we need to do more than be prepared for war. We need to be preparing the world for peace. We need to do more than know how to wage war. We need to wage peace. That's why I want a Department of Peace, where major peace-building factors, the expansion of economic opportunities for women, educational opportunities for children, the diminishment of violence towards women, and the amelioration of unnecessary human despair. Whenever those factors are present, you have a higher incidence of peace and a lower incidence of violence. You need a president, I believe, who's committed to that and wants to put as many resources behind waging peace. And the last thing I would say that I feel very strongly about is my commitment to children. Children, to me, are the greatest collateral damage. Some people think that the earth itself is the greatest collateral damage of neoliberal economics. I think children are. Because children aren't old enough to vote, so they're not a constituency. They're not old enough to work, so they don't have any financial leverage. I want a massive transfer of resources to children under the age of 8 and 10. We now know things about the brains of little children that we didn't even know 10 years ago. We got to massively support kids in early childhood. If a child cannot learn to read by the age of 8, then the chances of high school graduation are drastically reduced and the chances of incarceration are drastically increased. If you want to have a thriving economy in America 20 years from now, take better care of your 10-year-olds today. So I want every public school in America, just like John F. Kennedy said, we will send a man to the moon in 10 years. I want in 10 years for every public school in America to be a palace of learning and culture and the arts. I want the United States to become that best place in the world to raise a child. We are far from it now. Far from it now. Compared to other advanced democracies, our child poverty rate is much higher and all kinds of factors involved in the well-being of children. We're way down on the list, and that needs to change.
Why do you think? Because this sounds so incredible and like a euphoria, right? Like a euphoric vision of America. The children are happy, they're at peace, they have all the resources they need. A Department of Peace, which actually is shocking to know that when you really think about it, there's no Department of Peace. There's Department of Justice, of Reform, of whatever else, but there's no
Department of Children, for that matter.
No Department of Children, which could fall under Department of Peace. But even though I think any American listening to that would say, of course we want healthcare, we want the children to be happy, we want peace. Why is it though that we think, but that's a pipe dream? Is it like
because we've been trained to that. We've been trained to expect too little. We've been trained to limit our public imagination. When I was a child, the thought was America can do big things. America can do great things. Now we're supposed to be, oh, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. We did a small thing. No, we should be doing big things. And some people would say, well, it's not small, it is big. Look at the investments in green energy in the Inflation Reduction Act. Well, yeah, that's true. But that's still 1/5 of the money that we gave to the defense budget. And all of those benefits will be completely wiped out by the deleterious effects of the Willow project. So sorry, not enough. Not enough. The fact that I understand that the Republicans will only give you crumbs. And I understand that compared to that Democrats want to give you a cookie, but you can't survive on cookies either. I think every American should have the right to feast if they work hard enough. To me, that must be our commitment. And so when you say, why are Americans thinking it's a pipe dream? I think part of what I bring to this is because I am older. I remember a time when it wouldn't have been considered a pipe dream. In the 1960s, when the president said, we're going to have a war on poverty, people went, good. Only today, this acquiescence to, well, I guess we can't have it. has become normalized. But in the 1960s, people would say, oh, we can have a war on poverty. That'll never happen. In the 1960s, well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, it's good. We're doing that. And that's what concerns me about this country, this devolution, this just people have given up. And this is what is dangerous, is how many people have given up, how many, and every day. And this is why we have so many deaths of despair. You know, when you have that much despair, this is dangerous. This is where you get your inevitable personal and societal dysfunctions, the addiction rate, the suicide rate, the overdose rate, the depression rate. And then also that kind of mass despair becomes a petri dish out of which ideological capture, you know, people become vulnerable to ideological capture by genuinely psychotic forces. That's why it's so interesting that FDR said we wouldn't have to worry about a fascist takeover as long as he said, as democracy delivers on its blessings. And democracy is not delivering on its blessings today. That's what I want. And that's what I would seek as president, for democracy to deliver on its blessings. Right now, it delivers on its blessings big time for a very few Americans. Some of them need to go back in their lane. Some of them need to pay more fair taxes. Thank you very much. And we need to make it not just easier for those who already have to get more and more and more. We need to make it easier for so many people simply struggling to survive to have a chance to thrive in this country.
Well, no matter what anyone thinks, no one can argue about your gift of speaking and orating. My final question, and I know you're on this campaign trail and you're busy, is about, you know, it's so clear you've spoken for years to thousands of people at a time, and I've seen you off stage, you meet with them, you look them in the eyes, you talk to them. And so I think that if anything, we can say you do have a grasp of what Americans are thinking, feeling when you talk about addictions or mental health or whatever else. They've looked you in the eyes and spoken to you about these things.
Yes.
That is not a political opinion. That's just a matter of fact. That's what you've done.
Thank you.
What people, yeah. With that, you know, a lot of celebrities over the years have posted quotes that you've written. They've read your books, they've posted about your books, most notably Oprah having you on her show, Super Soul Sunday. I understand it's different to have somebody on a show and to endorse them for president, but have you heard from these people? Have you heard from the Oprahs of the world?
No, that's the problem, you know, sometimes when, and this isn't just about celebrities, but it's true of a lot of quote unquote influencers. A lot of people are into brand protection these days. You know, oh, you know, you've been tarnished. People are making fun of you. So I'm afraid if I say how much I like you, they'll make fun of me. Or when it comes to a lot of people in politics, oh, I'm so tied to the Democratic Party. I really like you, but you know, my funders, I think, you know, there's a lot of covert sort of threats, sometimes expressed and sometimes just kind of in the air. But I hope that will change. A lot of people are saying, I'm ready to go on this train. You know, let's go. I find that among a lot of younger people, a lot of Gen Z and so forth. But also, Frank, this campaign is 10 days old.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
It's crazy to think,
you know,
10 days.
Yeah,
I've seen you do so much press.
Yeah, thank you. So we are very, very early in the process, and I respect that people are processing. And just listen, I'm just honored, and I want to thank you. I'm just honored if people will listen and think about it. I don't expect anybody to be necessarily committing to vote for me today, but if someone is just giving me a serious listen, then I feel that I'm grateful.
Thank you so much. And you know, it's not a reflection of even my own personal views, but I think it's so important. Wherever you go, whether you win, you don't win, you get really far, you decide tomorrow to end it, whatever it is, people at least now have listened to the fact that, or opened their eyes to, you know what, there is a system. Maybe we should just look at this, or continue to believe it if you want, but at least question it and realize that, you know, you're not just speaking with the choir, but you actually thought about it, you listened, you looked, you followed the money trails. It's so important to the fact that you're ringing the bell.
Thank you. That's how I see it. You know, it's interesting you say that. That's how I see this campaign. I see it as a, what do you call it? Tuning fork. I feel the chords are there. I've always felt in my career, that I'm somebody, I'm just saying what everybody I know is saying, but I say it when the mic is on. You know, I say when the lights are on. I have this little mischievous quality. And I feel this too. I'm just saying what everybody, we all know this stuff to be true. I'm just saying it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Marianne.
Thank you so much. Thank you.